Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to complain a bit. Because I made something that is very interesting. Well, I'm going to complain about two things. For one, you may have noticed a little slight tweak in some of my things. For starters, my Twitter/YouTube banner/website banner has been changed to a different thing. See, originally, it was like a little thingy with like my logo, my name, my like YouTube name, and then 8 buttons: Teddy Roosevelt, Debs, FDR, LBJ, Jesse Jackson, Ralph Nader, Dennis Kucinich, Rocky Henderson, Bernie 2016, and Jill 2016 things, with little blurbs that were like, a channel where you can only be informed about politics so that you can be a more informed voter in the future, just so you know I'm a center left social Democrat. Well, basically, I decided to change some of that for a number of reasons. Basically, I was like, some of that stuff that I said didn't necessarily fit me anymore, so yeah, I get rid of that. Then I also switched up some of the buttons. Now instead, it's Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt again, Debs, Robert M. LaFollette's button, another FDR button, a different FDR button is what I meant to say, a different Nader button, Rocky Anderson, Jill 2016, AOC's congressional button, AMLO's button, and Bernie 2020. Because basically the idea is that, the buttons are supposed to be, the politicians I feel influenced by to a degree. A lot of these, all the ones that I listed, both the previous one, this one, and even to a degree, the unused one that I had, basically, they all have references and, they explain, I learned a little bit about them and about my political ideology through them. One small complaint that I have is that I didn't manage to sneak in William Jennings Bryan in there, because William Jennings Bryan, I kind of wish that I managed to get him on there again, because he was on the test one, but he didn't make it to the final one, but oh well. There are other people who are more influential than him. Another complaint is that in part of the rebrand, I created a brand new channel trailer, which I cannot show yet, because there's one thing in there that's it's not out yet. If I don't have it out yet, then I can't do it. Now, you probably know what it is, but, I'm just saying, it's pretty obvious what it is, considering I'm so, it has to be out before I post the trailer, so obviously you know what it is, but, just don't wait for it. The trailer's so good that I literally almost didn't record the episode because I just kept listening to it over and over again, oh yes, this is so good. The reason why this trailer is better is because, I know a lot of things better, and also I have 3 years of content under my belt, so I have more clips I can use. But anyways, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, we're going to cover some of the things that I teased in the last episode, the Peru and Mexico elections. First, Peru. It seems now that a lot of things can happen, but as of right now, it seems that Pedro Castillo will be Peru's next president. Now, I say this because currently, Keiko Fujimori has tried to push to get certain ballots disqualified, because it is a very close race. He's got 50.14 and she has 49.86. So basically, if she just gets rid of certain things, if she gets rid of a certain amount of ballots, then hypothetically she could walk out victorious. But the thing is, a lot of the people who came to check the elections, including a lot of people that you wouldn't think would be supportive, like the OAS, have literally been no, this election's been pretty fair. I can't really see anything that would indicate that this is a massive fraud. Now, especially the fact that Pedro Castillo is not in power, and his party was tiny when it first entered into the scene. So legitimately, how could he rig it? Now, this is actually funny. It seems that here are the reasons why she wants to throw some of the ballots out. It's actually kind of funny because they were doing an investigation and showing some of the ballots that some people had an issue with. And the reason why some of the ballots are being considered to be thrown out is because a lot of Pedro Castillo voters were so mad at Keiko Fujimori that not only did they cross out Pedro, because that's how you vote in Latin American ballots, you X out the candidate that you want, but also they drew on Keiko. They would draw, some people would have, the devil mustache and devil beard and devil horns. Some people would draw, Keiko in jail. Some people would, cross out her eyes. Basically, people just really didn't like her. So that's why she wants to throw away some of the ballots. That's the legitimate, quote-unquote, reason, why some of the ballots will be thrown out. Because she's well, I mean, they desecrated the ballots. Which is, I guess, but I would assume it's pretty clear which the candidates they preferred, so should we count them or not count them? I mean, personally, I would assume that a lot of Pedro supporters would be a lot more conscientious of this fact, but I mean, to be fair, I don't even know if, these were, I'm very certain that, for the most part, it's not, that many. It's probably, 100 out of the millions, maybe 1,000. So it's so what? The reported number is around 200,000 that she wants to throw out, which would deadlock the race. But I mean, we'd have to technically wait to see how this plays out. But I'm willing to say that it's more than likely that Pedro's going to be the president of Peru pretty soon. The pink tide is still going strong. Now, I mean, again, I will say, I'm not necessarily a fan of Pedro Castillo, and I mean, I'm holding my reservations on him. I'm not going to say that he's going to be the worst of the pink tide leaders. I mean, it's let's be honest, it's a hard thing to beat. Daniel's kind of got you beat, dude. But I would assume, let's wait to see how things play out. Not only in the election, but also if Pedro wins, see how the administration plays out. Speaking of the pink tide going strong, the person who kickstarted the restart of the pink tide, AMLO and Mexico, you see, Morena also held their elections, and here are the current results. I say current because some things are still a little bit shaky. Now, AMLO, of course, did not necessarily do the best. His results are kind of similar to the Democrats in the midterms, not the midterms, in the latest election. Basically, here's what happened. His coalition is set to win between 265 to 292 seats. I might say, wait, that's a bad thing? Well, kind of, yes. Because that will put AMLO into he'll have a majority, but he won't have a supermajority like he did previously in the legislative chamber. But now he's got a more even thing, especially considering the opposition. There's still potential for Va por Mexico, the mainstream opposition coalition, to push forth into the current administration. And it might grow slightly larger depending on if Citizens Movement manages to go through. Now, what I will say is those three parties that attempted to be a thing, Force for Mexico, the Social Progressive Party, what's the other one? The Solidarity and Counter Party. Yeah, those three, nah, they didn't even come close. But now on to the more noticeable thing, the gubernatorial races, which, this one was a bit different for AMLO in a decent way. So there were 15 gubernatorial races up for election in the midterms. Here are the major takeaways. 1, AMLO, his coalition, like Morena, won 11 of the 15. Now, way early on, it was predicted that Morena would win all but one, but of course, electoralism paved its way and, some districts changed. And a lot of these wins were very interesting because they were beating, long-standing political dynasties. Like, for example, Michoacan has been historically a PRD hotspot since the PRD was formed, because, Lazaro Cardenas was born in Michoacan, and so was Cuauhtemoc Cardenas. But Morena was able to beat them, even with the coalition that they built. The next takeaway is that the PRI was basically electorally wiped out. They won none of the, governorships. Literally none. Another interesting thing is that 6 of the 15 governorships up for this election were won by women. And of those 6, 5 of them were Morena candidates. The last one was a PAN candidate. Speaking of which, here's some electoral breakdowns of the thing. Of the 4 districts that didn't go to Morena, the state of Chihuahua went to PAN. Querétaro went to PAN. Both of them were kind of expected, really. They were PAN hotspots for a long time, so it's these were expected. However, 2 of the many governorships were actually into a bit of a thing. They were a bit weird. The states of San Luis Potosi and Nuevo León, it was pretty unclear which candidate of which party was going to win, because some polls had Nuevo León as a PAN district, some had it as PRI, some had it as Morena, some had it as the citizens movement. It was shifting, and same thing with San Luis Potosi. Except I think for them it was just PRI and Morena flipping back and forth. Well, here's how the breakdowns go. Nuevo León was won by the citizens movement, also known as the party that didn't join with the anti-AMLO coalition, but didn't also join AMLO's coalition because they wanted to be independent. Now, San Luis Potosi is very interesting because the person who won their governorship, it was legitimately what? Their governorship was won by the Together We Will Make History candidate. And I might say, wait, is that AMLO's coalition? Well, no, it was not. You see, in San Luis Potosi, the Together We Will Make History coalition was simply PVEM and PT. So, San Luis Potosi will be governed by a PVEM candidate by the name of Jose Ricardo Gallardo Cardona. Now, that's incredibly interesting in my eyes. The same thing could be said if it was a PT person. I believe this is the first governorship that PVEM will have, so kudos on them. It's very interesting, and we'll have to wait to see how things play out. Now, speaking of Latin American countries, now let's move on to one that isn't governed by a leftist, it's governed by a right-winger. It is El Salvador, and they're interesting because they become the first country to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender after passing a law. Now, you see, here's the thing about Bitcoin. I really don't care that much about Bitcoin. And the only thing that made me start rethinking Bitcoin, because originally my position on Bitcoin was literally just agnostic. I was just who cares? But the thing that I was really curious about with this is the only reason why it's a thing, because the reason why he's doing this is not because of any altruistic reasons. I believe in Bitcoin. Maybe that's what he's saying he is doing, but it's obvious that he's not doing that, because it's pretty clear that the only reason he's doing this is because, you may remember, not long ago, we talked about a news story where a ton of the people in his administration were caught being corrupt. So it's that's exactly what happened. So in order to get all of that off of his back, he's what? The Bitcoin. So yeah. The only reason I started looking back into Bitcoin and actually starting to care is that apparently it's connected to NFTs. So it's which are very bad for the environment. So it's if that's the case, then screw Bitcoin. Though I really didn't care about Bitcoin because it's legitimately people wasting their money on nothing, just like NFTs. like, again, I don't care about Bitcoin that much as long as it's environmentally conscious. If it's not, then screw it. Because again, like NFTs and all this stuff are like newer, so it's like I don't really know the depths of it. So anyways, speaking of something that I do know the depths of, Julian Assange, a group of British MPs that are across party lines. There's like one Tory, a couple of SNP people, the one Green Party candidate, and a lot of Labour Party people like Jeremy Corbyn, who've signed a letter to Joe Biden, who was going to be attending the G7 summit, basically telling him, dude, drop the charges against Julian Assange. And yeah, I'm down. I know the letter's not going to do much, but you know, it's honestly just like, yeah, raise the issue at this point. Biden, I will say this before and I'll say this again. Biden is more than likely, Biden is more likely to pardon Julian Assange than Trump ever would. I know this for a fact because Trump is the one who started the charges against Julian Assange. Biden did not. He's continuing the charges, yes, but he's also way more susceptible to people pushing him. He's hypothetically way more susceptible to being pushed on something. Like I said, he's more than likely. I don't know, not more than likely. I keep saying more than likely when I mean more likely. He's more likely to do it than Trump, but that doesn't necessarily mean like I'm gonna sit there and be like, Biden is gonna pardon Assange. It's like, no. People who are doing that with Trump were stupid and like literally just brain dead. Speaking of brain dead, the Canadian Green Party. Now you might say, what? Why is the Canadian Green Party brain dead? Well, very simple. The Canadian Green Party was going places, and then their leader, Annamie Paul, decided, I kind of don't want success. I kind of just don't want people to like us, so yeah. She decided to start into spats with her MPs. Basically, here's what happened. Annamie Paul has been well known for being a Zionist. She openly states, I'm a Zionist. And she's been well known for, making a lot of very stupid statements in regards to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Because she's a Zionist, so she has to simp for the Israeli state. That's literally what Zionism is. Don't at me, because that's literally what Zionism is. That's what the ideology is. The ideology, here's the definition. An ideology that espouses the establishment of and support of a Jewish state. That's it. That's what it is. So you have to support the Jewish state. Honestly, calling yourself a Zionist or an anti-Zionist is really cringy. Saying, I am 100% against a country, or I am 100% for a country, it's just stupid. I am for facts and data, and the little guy, whoever that may be, is whoever that may be. But saying unilaterally, I will support this nation no matter what they do, is stupid. So here's the thing. This was where the problem started occurring. Annamie Paul is a Zionist. However, the Green Party of Canada has historically been basically for the rejects of a lot of groups of people. They're basically the reject left. If you're a hardcore lefty, you probably support the NDP. If you're a Quebecy lefty, you'll support Quebec, Bloc Québécois. If you're a very center left type of person, you just probably support the Liberal Party, and basically everyone else will go to the Greens. Now, being the rejects also means you hold the less than mainstream positions. And one of the mainstream positions for any politician period is basically being somewhat of a Zionist. You have to give some sort of tepid support to Israel. It can range from being a hardcore Israeli supporter, or it can be we would support the Israeli state, but of course we gotta also support the Palestinians. Basically something like that. That's the mainstream political themes. So with the Greens, naturally, one of the to be anti-mainstream, they'll normally be anti-Zionist to a degree. I don't know. I don't know how many of them would describe themselves as anti-Zionist, but you get my point. The voters would probably be considered anti-Zionist. Think of it like a George Galloway. Like, nobody in the Labour Party in the UK would consider themselves anti-Zionist, but George Galloway would, and he always found, like, tiny parties that, like, have no real mainstay in the, like, British political discourse. But the Greens sort of adopt those same lines, and naturally, the three members of, one of the members of the Green Party caucus, Paul Manley, literally joined the Greens and ran as a Green because his position on the Israel-Palestine situation was too extreme for the NDP. That gives you an indication about it. But basically, and I think Paul Manley, he's like not even that extreme. But basically, anyways, back to the point. Basically, like Antwin and Manley, you know, they called out like some of the Israel-Palestine situations. Were like, hey, this is a bad thing. But then Annamie Paul's public director basically called out unnamed members of the Green Party and stated that they promoted discrimination and anti-Semitism and called for them to be defeated and be replaced with progressive climate champions who are Antifa and pro-LGBTQ and pro-indigenous sovereignty and Zionists. So Annamie Paul literally had one of her, like, advisors call for two of her own members of her party to be defeated in the next election. Literally, like the second that happened, Antwin left the Green Party and joined the Liberal Party. And there was even speculation that Paul Manley would do the same thing, but he stated that he was going to stay with the Green Party. So, literally, like a year after the Greens got their biggest electoral win with 3 MPs, Annamie nearly got that to be back to 1. Bravo, Annamie. You really know how to win elections, which explains why you're not an MP yourself. And I don't think you ever will. Manley probably should have been the leader, or Dimitri Lascaris. But it's too late for the Greens now. They're gonna lose any chance they have at anything. Anyways, the next story is basically a bunch of progressive members of Congress will be withholding or at least threatening to withhold their votes for a infrastructure package that doesn't include massive amounts of climate change, like, things. Like, if the infrastructure package that is coming up doesn't properly address climate change, then progressive members of Congress, like, members of the Senate have even stated, like, they will not be voting for it. And it's not even, like, just progressives. Like, I think, like, Michael Bennett has stated, like, if it doesn't properly address climate change, then he won't vote for it. So basically, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing basically force the vote done right. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Everybody was talking about, oh, this is force the vote, get it? It's force the vote. It's like, this is not at all like force the vote. Your strategy was to withhold your votes for speaker so that you can have a meaningless vote on a bill that will not pass, which was haphazardly thrown together by a bunch of podcasters who literally know nothing about the electoral scene, even though they're supposed to be pundits. But anyways, that force the vote is dead, so no point in talking about it any further. Now let's move on to some good news. The Keystone XL pipeline is out. After all this deliberation, it has finally been decided that the Keystone XL pipeline is effectively done. And by done, I don't mean they completed it. I mean they've scrapped it. It's like, there's no point in continuing any further. So, a 2016 issue has finally ended. Now, can we move on to the other 2016 issue that should be ended at this point? You know, the fact that people in Flint, Michigan don't have water? I don't even know if that's true anymore. But it's a common joke. People say, like, Flint, Michigan still doesn't have water, so they probably don't. And I mean, if they don't have water, we should probably do something about that. But anyways, now let's move on to the main topic of this video. This is similar to one of the podcast episodes that I did previously, except But, like, in a slightly different sphere, you see, when I originally, when I made the video before, it was, when should we cancel politicians? Now, it's time for us to expand that question. When should we cancel progressive organizations? Because, progressive organizations have been, they don't get everything right 100%. So basically, what do I mean by a progressive organization? Basically, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about, Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, Our Revolution, People for Bernie, DSA, Progressive Democrats of America, Democracy for America, the PCCC, Rose Caucus. I guess to a degree, third parties can be a thing in this category, but honestly, third parties, no, I don't think. They would probably have to get a video all to themselves in this degree. When should we cancel third parties? But, even then, it's we don't know. Because third parties got to do a lot of things, and one of the things that it frequently entails is, I guess I'll talk about third parties a little bit first. Why don't we do that instead? Not instead, but at first. So that would entail the Greens, the Movement for a People's Party, National Progressive Party, who else? Peace and Freedom Party, I guess. Socialist Party. Basically all the other minor left parties. Legal Marijuana Now Party, Grassroots Party. Basically, when should we cancel them? Simple. To be fair, to a degree, all of the parties and groups can be canceled by one big thing. Simply put, going back on their promises. If a progressive organization says, we'll endorse candidates who support Medicare for all, and they don't support a candidate who's in favor of Medicare for all, I don't even know if that's necessarily cancel-worthy for the whole organization, but, you might get cancel-worthy for slightly. You definitely, go, oh, you're on thin ice, buddy. Third parties especially have, one small extra thing they have to do. One of the big things that they have to do is, to make people check out if they're sus or not, is to see who they run against and what happens. Because, and even to a degree with that level, you can't 100% verify if it's the party itself that has these issues, or if it's I don't know, bad actors trying to influence the party. For example, the Greens. The Greens have basically always tried, they've always tried to push back against any of the smears of we're just people who are trying to help the Republicans win. But then they always just so happen to face some small amount of the Republicans trying to use them as a spoiler. It happens quite that often. In fact, it happened, it was revealed that happened a little bit recently, where a bunch of Republicans had, a little Facebook group, not a Facebook group, but, yes, a Facebook group, where they were basically trying to influence a bunch of, Democratic socialists who would normally support, a Democrat to support Green candidates in the 2018 midterms. And a similar thing happened up in, the Montana. Basically, here's the whole story. This is a story that I like telling because it's a very interesting story. The Green Party of Montana made a very stunning decision in the 2020 elections where they stated that they would not be running any candidate for any office in that election cycle because each of those races were close. The presidential race was pretty close. The Senate race was pretty close. The House race was pretty close. The Attorney General race was pretty close. All of these races were incredibly close. So the Green Party of Montana did not want to be blamed for any sort of spoiler effect that they could have in the election. So they basically stated that they would not be running any candidates in any of those races and would even pressure the National Green Party to push for a no-nominee ballot. Because it's better for us to say we teamed up with the Democrats to stop fascism than to try and push for we're super purists. And that was a very interesting message, and a lot of people took notice, and a lot of people took notice. Me, I took notice, a lot of Democrats took notice, and they're oh, that's cool. But then one thing happened, the day before the election, Like the day before, like the ballot line would officially close and people wouldn't be able to file for elections anymore. And like before, like basically right after the deadline to pull out of elections, all of a sudden, a bunch of Green Party names appeared on the ballot for various offices. For those very same offices that they said that they did not want to run in. Senate, governor, like their at-large congressional district. And then people immediately jumped on the mad banner of like, oh, the Greens, they lied to us. These freaking liars. They said that they would not be supporting any ballot line, but instead they are going to actually be pushing for their candidates. And then like everybody, like they threw a hissy fit at the Greens. And then the Greens were basically like, hold on. We didn't authorize any candidates. In fact, the person who's running for Congress stated we've denied him, like we've told him point blank, we do not want him to run with our candidate, like with our party anymore, because he went against the 10 key values. Come to find out, they were all bought and paid for by the Republican Party to serve as spoilers. And the same thing happened in Minnesota, but in a slightly different way. You see, in Minnesota, there are actually two marijuana-oriented political parties, the Grassroots Party and the Legal Marijuana Now Party. The Grassroots Party is still 100% good, but the Legal Marijuana Now Party, it's pretty evident that that party has been taken over because of one major incident that happened in 2020. That election, they had this really big, interesting thing, and then there's an even broader, thing of the situation. First, there was a very controversial thing that happened. One of their candidates, Adam Weeks, tragically passed away. And it was very sad. Everybody was, mourning. And the Democratic nominee, Angie Craig, basically said, hey, since he's dead, can we, remove him from the ballot line? Because Minnesota notoriously has problems with this because of what happened with her good old buddy Paul Wellstone. So I think it's best if we just remove him from this race. And then they were like, yeah, you know what? I think this is pretty reasonable. But the Legal Marijuana Now Party insisted that Weeks remain on the ballot. They were like, no, we can't remove him from the ballot. He needs to remain on the ballot. And then they even went so far as to pressure the the state to not only keep him on the ballot, but even push so that there wouldn't be a second election, because they were like, at this point we might have to just hold a special election, that race will be reclassified as a special election, and then this race will be a different race where it'll be just Craig and the Republican nominee. But they're like, no, you can't do this. He needs to run on the ballot line 100%. And people are like, why do you care so much? He's dead. It's not like he's going to, be mad. He's dead. And then it was discovered that the reason why they cared so much was that Weeks was a Republican plant who was paid off by the GOP to run in this district to spoil it. And it turns out the Legal Marijuana Now Party ran in only Democratic incumbent races. And not just Democratic incumbent races, but some of them were relatively close races. I mean, one of them was a swing district. Two of them were a swing district. Maybe three, I don't know. Maybe three of them were swing districts. The last one was Ilhan Omar, so it was pretty clear. Yeah, these guys are bots. They're plants. The Grassroots Party was slightly different. Now, there's a reason why I still like the Grassroots Party, not the Legal Marijuana Now Party, because the Grassroots Party, basically, here's what happened. They actually, they run in districts as well, but in the 2018 elections, their districts were a lot more even. They ran in 2 Democrat districts and 2 Republican districts. And in fact, one of the Democratic districts that they ran in was a notoriously, it was Colin Peterson. So basically, it was 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And even the Democrat that did run against, Betty McClellan, she's okay, but, she's not the best. And in certain races where it did get marginally close, they did actually try to pressure people to do differently. Like, for example, they ran in the 2018 Minnesota Attorney General race, and they they ran in that race against Keith Ellison, but they basically pressured a bunch of their voters to vote for Keith Ellison, saying, hey, we only need 5% of you to, actually remain on the ballot. If you actually want to, pressure and put, legal marijuana on the ballot, he's your guy. But for the third parties, canceling them really isn't worth much. Because, let's be real, they haven't done that much. The real problem with things is, where we get to the Democrat, the Democrat organizations, the people that decide to try to run almost exclusively as Democrats. Our Revolution, Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress. So, what makes us want to cancel them? I even asked some people, what would make you, what do you have, what are your gripes? What do you hate about these organizations? Didn't get any responses, but just from generally looking at the, people, generally looking at a lot of complaints that I see on the online left, it does seem pretty obvious what is the major issue. The biggest issue that I seem to see is in regards to some of the candidates that these organizations endorse. Now, the gripes in regards to the endorsements of certain candidates will not necessarily be the same in all these organizations. One of the first major complaints that a lot of people levy orgs like Justice Democrats and Our Revolution is that they don't endorse that many people, which isn't exactly true, but I can sort of understand what they mean. Basically, one of the complaints that we see is, there's some races that many people see as, very high profile that these organizations will simply ignore. Brand New Congress, Justice Democrats, Our Revolution, none of them endorsed against Nancy Pelosi. None of them, Brand New Congress endorsed Michaela Walks, I believe, against Steny Hoyer, but they didn't endorse a lot of, basically when there's a very, very, very high profile race, there's a good chance that they either will or will not endorse. But not endorsing as many people isn't one problem. Sometimes people will make the issue that they endorse the wrong candidates. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's examine one major controversial race that happened recently. The race for Louisiana District 2. Basically, here's what happened. Gary Chambers was basically the third wheel to Karen Carter Peterson and Troy Carter. These were the three, those were basically the 3 people in the race. There were a lot of other candidates, but basically it was a 3-person race. And even effectively, many people were saying Gary Chambers wasn't that much of an effort. He basically had to get people to consider him a threat. And going in, it wasn't expected that he was going to do well. However, when the race totals were counted, it was discovered that Gary Chambers did way better than people thought. He was very, very close. In fact, if he just got a little bit more votes, he would have gotten in the runoff election against Troy Carter. Now, national organizations like Our Revolution endorsed Karen Carter Peterson because it was expected that she was going to be the progressive nominee to run against Troy Carter, which she was. But many people raised an eyebrow at the fact that they basically ignored Gary Chambers when they see, hypothetically, this, if they did endorse him, maybe their endorsement could have pushed him over the edge. Maybe their endorsement could have actually gotten Gary Chambers to be in that runoff. And then, with a more dynamic candidate, he could potentially have won. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I mean, just looking at the facts, it's a possibility. And that possibility made people say that made some people go, we're done with our revolution, because that made them think our revolution went corporate, I guess. Not even necessarily that, but in the realm of they probably could have done more, but they didn't. Other organizations have done this as well. For example, Justice Democrats endorsed Judge Gomez over, Josie Caballero, even though Josie was a better candidate, but Georgette was the one that was more than likely going to make it to the runoff. And she did, so that's the one they picked. Now, I don't know if if they endorsed Josie, that she would have been the one to make it to the runoff. But, it's just painting people say, hey, maybe they should have endorsed Josie, especially considering Josie was younger than Georgette, I think. So many people were saying, that's kind of the whole point of Justice Democrats. The whole point was to get, a bunch of young people to run against older people, which is why Chuy Garcia is not a member of the squad, because he's too old. And not even Marie Newman, who's a Justice Democrat, is considered part of the squad, because she's way older than the rest of the squad, I believe. The squad's in their, early 30s to early 40s, and Marie's 50, so it's she's not necessarily she's not a young, spry, young congresswoman like AOC was, and neither is Chuy, so that's why he's not a member of the squad either. Even though I personally think that they both should be members of the squad. But anyways, that's a different story. There is also, to a degree, a level of, in the other direction, for example, Brand New Congress. Brand New Congress sort of has this issue, but in the opposite direction. Rather than endorsing the candidate that they think will get more votes, it seems that they have a historical precedent of picking people who will not get anywhere close to getting, close to the top. They endorsed Tomas Ramos in New York District 17, when in fact Semelise Lopez, the DSA endorsed candidate, would have done a whole lot better. She did a whole lot better. She got 4th place. And if people like Tomas Ramos, hypothetically, in a scenario where, if you believe in the spoiler effect and stuff, if he was not in the race and another progressive, Melissa Favorato, I don't know, she was endorsed by Cynthia Nixon, but if they were not in the race and those people all united behind Semelise, then Semelise would have won. They are currently endorsing a woman by the name of Sheila McCormick, who is running in Florida District 20 to replace Alcee Hastings, when in fact there is another progressive in the race who is considered the bigger name, Omari Hardy. For those who don't know who that is, he's the guy who made a bunch of rounds on the internet because he was screaming at the mayor for cutting off people's electricity in the middle of a pandemic. He's considered the bigger name because he's a state representative, but they endorsed Sheila. In California District 12 in the 2018 midterms, they endorsed a candidate who got 5th place. Stephen Jeff and Shahid Buttar got more than him, but since the left vote was divided between them, a Green, and another independent, there was a Nancy Pelosi versus a Republican runoff. In the New Mexico District 1 race, they endorsed, I don't even know her name, they endorsed some random woman, when in fact the candidate who was considered the progressive torchbearer was Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, who was this close to actually winning and probably would have needed more help than the other one who got 5th place again. Do we factor that into canceling them? But they've actually been considered very good, in certain degrees. I point this story out a lot. Humanist Report, stated in one of his podcasts that, when he interviewed one brand new Congress member, they stated, hey, can you hit me up? If you want to if you want to support any of our other candidates or interview them, we have their entire email list and we'll give it to you. And some of the people that they do endorse that would be considered the 3rd place or 4th place losers aren't even necessarily that bad. For example, in New York District 9, they endorsed Isaiah James, and in Illinois District 7, they endorsed Anthony Clark, who, while they both got lower vote totals than another person who was sort of the quote-unquote progressive torchbearer, it was reasonable for them to probably endorse someone else. Like for Isaiah's case, I don't really have that much info on the guy, what's his name? Adam something. Or Adem, I think. I don't know. He's a Dem. I get it? He's a Democrat, so he's a Dem. And then in Anthony Clark's case, he was the only person to challenge Danny K. Davis in the 2018 midterms, so it was natural for them to probably endorse him again for the 2020 election because they didn't know if Keena could be trusted. Now Keena is one of the Justice Dem torchbearers, so I guess that's over now. There's also been a lot of accusations from a lot of these groups about like certain things behind the scenes that I don't really have all the info on, and it does seem like a majority of it seems like just extreme pettiness. Like when people like Paula Jean Swearingen and Seema Hernandez are trying to tout like, oh, these groups are very bad behind the scenes, but they don't necessarily go in depth about what they do have, especially considering Paula's like big controversies that she believes that they are funneling money from her campaign to their campaign, when it's like, I mean, I don't necessarily know if they're funneling money from your campaign to theirs, but I mean, your proof of evidence is the fact that they didn't spend enough money on your campaign and they spend a lot more money on AOC's district, even though the AOC was winning in the polls at the time. So yeah, like there's to a degree, like honestly, like similarly, it's up to your discretion. It's up to your discretion which of these organizations do you cancel or not. Personally, I don't know if we can like 100% cancel a complete organization unless we can see for a fact that they are not living up to their, like, what they espouse. Like Movement for People's Party, they keep aligning themselves with like fascistic people. Sorry, you ain't the people I want to be part of. But like a few bad endorsements doesn't necessarily take away from the movements that these groups support, and I think it would be beneficial for us, for the most part, to at least give skeptical support. Like, I'm not saying you have to give their diehard support. Like, I've said this before and I'll say it again. When I say I support Justice Dems, I don't mean the pencil pushers. I didn't even know who Alexandra Rojas was, like the person who runs Justice Democrats. I didn't know who she was because I don't care about her. What I care about are the people that I like that are the people that are like the members of Congress, the activists. Like those people are the ones I care about, not the pencil pushers. So yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say on this topic. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the future video might comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or check out my articles on the Independent Political Report.